My name is Arthur Seidman, and I was in the field artillery of the United States Army. I was drafted into service on April 23rd, 1941. My initial service was with the 186th Field Artillery Battalion, and initially they sent us up to a place called Madison Barracks, and from there they shifted us over to 40th and Allen, which is right outside of Burlington, Vermont, and we joined our sister battalion up there. We were the 186th, and they were the 187th. Initially, we went down to North Carolina on maneuvers, and then we went back to 40th and Allen, and we were stationed there when the war broke out. From 40th and Allen, we went on what we would call mini maneuvers. We were in Massachusetts, and then they sent us up to Pine Camp, which is upstate New York, and it was up there that I was selected to go to OCS, that's Officers Candidate School, and it was the Field Artillery School at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And then I was selected to go overseas, and initially we left from San Francisco and went to New Caledonia. And as I recall, I must have stayed there for maybe 2 months until I was assigned to my regular outfit, which was at that time in New Zealand. We stayed in New Zealand again about 2 months, and the outfit that I was with now, which was actually my permanent outfit from then on, was the 169th Field Artillery Battalion, attached to the 43rd Infantry Division. From there we went to, we made a landing, a beachhead, at Aitapi, New Guinea. There were about 25,000 Japs that had been pushed back into the jungle, and it was our job actually just to keep them there. We stayed in New Guinea again about 2 months, and then we were told that we were going to be that we were going to go into the Philippines, making an invasion in the Philippines. We made the landing at Lingayen Gulf in January of 1945, and I was assigned to be a forward observer with an infantry company. After we made the landing, we pushed through. My mission as a forward observer was to assist the infantry in what we called either targets of opportunity or positions that the enemy was in, and try to dislodge them from those positions. One memorable situation that came up was that I was told to join an infantry outfit that was going to cross a river and do an exploratory situation to find out how many Japs were on top of a particular high area. Well, when I joined the squad, and they were about, I would say, about 15 infantry soldiers and 2 officers, and they told me that they were going to cross this river and go through some rice paddies and go up onto the high ground. And they asked me if there's anything that I could do to help them, and I said, well, what I'll do is I'll have my outfit put down some smoke fire, which we could do, and over the river to cover their crossing. Well, we crossed this river, and as we were crossing, when we were almost on the other side, the smoke lifted, some wind came along, and we were subject to some very heavy rifle fire. Well, we went up on this hill, and we were on the side of it, and we could hear the Japs up on top talking. Then during the night, I was told that they were going to send up 4 or 5 men to see what was up on top of the hill. Well, these men went up there, and they must have been gone for about an hour. They came back, and all they said was that there were a lot of Japs up there, and we were in a wrong position. We should not have been in that particular spot with such a small group of men. The next morning, they evacuated us from that position. We went up on that same high ground on the opposite side. I was assigned to go with an infantry outfit, and I went up there on this high ground, and as I was adjusting fire, one of my buddies, one of the officers in my outfit, who was in a different position, came walking back holding his jaw, and he had been hit by mortar fire, and I think part of his jaw was shot away, and he looked at me and he said to me, "Arthur," he says, "I'm hit very bad. Somebody better take my place." So I went out there and I adjusted fire that he had started, and we were being subjected again to mortar fire, and fortunately enough, I wasn't hit, but we accomplished what we had to do up there. And when we got back, I was told that the captain of my battery, which was headquarters battery, was going to put me in for a Bronze Star. We stayed in the Philippines until the end of August. After they dropped the bomb, we went into Japan a couple of days after the surrender papers were signed. We went into Yokohama, and then we went north of Tokyo, and we were occupation troops. War is not a very pleasant place to be, but if the country is being subject to attack or being in danger of an enemy that might be dangerous for them, then it's the job of the young man, if the country wants him, and it's the job of the young man to go.
My name is Joseph Schreiber. I served with the U.S. Army. I served 5 campaigns. I invaded France on Utah Beach and ended the war in Germany. I took the basic training in Fort Belvoir, and then I was asked to attend Officers Candidate School, also in Fort Belvoir, which was another 3 months training, and I came out a second lieutenant. And from there I was sent to Camp Holabird in Maryland to learn about engineer equipment, such as bulldozers, cranes, and that sort of stuff, equipment. And from there I went to, we were assigned to Plattsburgh Barracks, awaiting the arrival of the recruits. While training was over in Plattsburgh, we moved to Elkins, West Virginia, where we participated in maneuvers with different units, field maneuvers. And that was finished. We went to Fort Dix, and we embarked, and then we were taken to New York, where we were embarked on the Queen Mary 1, and we sailed to Scotland. Took us 6 days to cross. Scotland, we landed in the Firth of Forth, and from there we boarded a train, and the train took us to our temporary home in Congleton, England, which is in the Midlands. And we stayed there until the end of May. We went down to London to embark on our transports to take us to France. I was promoted to first lieutenant, supervisor platoon of men. And when we went across, we stayed on in the channel about a week before the signal came in that we can disembark. And we landed in Utah Beach about 6 days after the initial invasion. And we moved inland. And I was with that outfit. It was a 628th Engineer Equipment Company. And then they were looking for a lieutenant for a combat outfit. And I was asked if I would like to go, and I said, I'll go. And I joined the 145th Engineer Combat Company with 3rd Army, General Patton's 3rd Army. Well, as Patton advanced forward, we went with him. And we cleared mines, minefields, and we built bridges for his tanks to cross. We were in St. Lo, and Patton was trying to break through, and he couldn't make it. And the Air Force came out that day. I recall that day vividly. There were 3,000 bombers that flew over St. Lo and bombed the town. It was a horror. It was just a horror, everything exploding, all buildings being blown down. And that's when we broke through and went right across France. But the Air Force did a great job. I went to Belgium. We were heading for Germany. We were down south. We wanted to go back north to assist the soldiers at Bastogne. That's when Patton turned his army around, and we drove all night. And it was the coldest winter they ever experienced in Europe. It was a horror. And we broke through to Bastogne. That's what they called the Battle of the Bulge. And by that time, the war was pretty near over. They had nothing left to fight with. That was their last stance. We stopped in a town called Oppenheim. That's right on the Rhine River. And there was just a captain and myself there at the edge of the river, and they were looking to bridge it so they can get the tanks across into Germany. So the other 3 lieutenants went back to bring the pontoon boats and the floating bridge equipment that we needed. And the captain said to me, he says, I have a sergeant and 6 soldiers from the 6th Division. And there's a rowboat down at the edge of the river with paddles, and you to go across with them. Now, it's 1,800 feet across on the Rhine River at that point. It's a fast-flowing river. He says, you go over there, and you have to determine if there's any enemy over there, and if it's a good place to bridge it. And we knew we were going to bridge on this side. We had to find a place on the German side. And I went over there, and fortunately, there were no Germans there. It was an excellent landing site for the bridge we were going to build. And we paddled back safely. Right the current and everything, we paddled across, and I was awarded a Bronze Star for going across. And that lasted for about 2 days, and then we were relieved, and we went back down south. I wound up in a town called Landshut, Germany. That's where I ended the war, a little town in Bavaria. And that's where I wound up in the end of the war. I was with the military government. They gave me a car with military government on the door, and they gave me a chauffeur who was formerly a tank driver for the Germans, and he would take me around. Now, the idea was to get them started, going back into business and restore Germany the way it was. But then I was told I have enough points to go home, and I left the project, in the midst. Someone else took over. After the war was over, we went back to France. We were housed in tents temporarily for about 5 days, and then we trucked over to Le Havre, the port of Le Havre, and I boarded the SS America and came back to America, back to somewhere in Massachusetts. And we boarded trains to go back to Fort Dix, and I lived in the Bronx at the time, and the train passed within about 3 blocks of my house, my own residence, and took me right into Fort Dix. I wouldn't like to see anybody go through that again, what we went through. It was a horrible experience.
My name is Joe Wilson. I went into the service by enlisting. I didn't immediately go into Kings Point. They were overbooked. And, but then I was finally notified that I was accepted. That was a great moment in my life. They sent me to San Francisco, to San Mateo, California, where they had a basic camp. They had 2 camps. They had one in Florida and one in California. From there, I went home on a short leave, and then they shipped me out on a Liberty ship as a cadet midshipman. From there, we ventured on to the Pacific, while the war was going on in the Pacific. I was shipped out of Wilmington, California, and we headed for Anahuac. And there we unloaded our cargo, and I spent some time ashore seeing how the soldiers were living on this hot island. Well, after coming back from the South Pacific, we went on to pick up cargo we had an empty ship. We picked up cargo in South America. Antofagasta, Chile, we picked up copper. Lima, Peru, we picked up lumber. Puna, Ecuador, something else. I mean, and I was paid for this trip too. And then through the canal and back home. Then at Kings Point for 6 months, more training. Then I was put aboard a beautiful cargo ship called a C2. I was still a cadet, and we headed off to England in a convoy. Over 100 ships, all blacked out at night, very mysterious, very exciting, and very dangerous too. Ships were being sunk by the millions of tons every month. But we managed to get through, and I wound up in Cardiff, Wales, and then Newport, England. And from there, we went ashore, and we took a train to London. And at that time, buzz bombs were being dropped by the Germans on London. And that night they sounded the alarm, and being a very foolish young man, I didn't go into the subways to hide. I went on the roof to see the action. I'd see the flare of the bomb, and then the flare would go out, and the sound of the buzz bomb would disappear, and I'd just wait, and I'd see an explosion. There were half a dozen of them before I went below. From there, we went on to D-Day. We didn't go ashore at Normandy, but we dropped cargo. We let off a lot of soldiers, and we could hear the action, but I never got involved in that. I could hear it and see it. It was, thousands of ships, thousands of all kinds of vehicles, aircraft carriers, merchant ships, Navy ships. They had barges coming out, and we would, with cranes and nets, take the cargo and drop it on their barges until we were empty, and they would continue. A lot of it was ammunition. Some of it were weapons, several tanks, and a lot of soldiers who were living on our ship in barracks that were built on the deck. After D-Day, we went back to the States, and then I was shipped out again in California aboard a merchant ship and heading back for Japan while the war was going on with Japan. And we stopped at Okinawa, Anahuac, and on to Tokyo after VJ Day. From Japan, I went back home, went back to Kings Point, and graduated. My travels taught me that people are pretty much the same the world over. The same percentages, whether it's Africa or Europe or Japan or China, they're all the same, good and bad, and they all want the same things in life. They want a home to live in, good education for their children, food, all the things that we like, the freedoms. Everybody loves freedom. No matter what our government tells you, the Muslims, everybody, they love freedom. But we spend our time being brainwashed by government. They, as well as the Germans and the Japanese and everybody else. And I got a whole different opinion of war also. War, I determined I would never volunteer again if I had that opportunity. War is a place where old men send young boys to die in order for them to get rich. There is no war that is necessary. They're all predetermined and planned and encouraged by corporations that can make money from war.